You bastards, you'd left us all dangling. Even as they cut down the rope, with the bare bones death notices in the New York Times, or broadcast over the airwaves by the counterculture's king jester. In the counterculture, the jester is king. The pale king, the whipping boy. We scurried for poet Ian Curtis's records, Foster Wallace's tomes, for they surely would hold the clues. Poetry and fiction now as reference books, case studies. How? How could they hold the clue for us literary ambulance chases? When you're dangling there on the end of a rope, or submerged in 3 foot of water with stones in your pocket, and these are not the stones of Beckett's Malloy. When your head is in the oven, gas mark whatever. Who knows what is passing through your mind? You can't write when you reach the point of no return over the precipice and throw yourself over. Believe me, I've cleaned the blood up after a serious suicide attempt by a loved one. Though, of course, at that point they didn't feel like anyone loved them at all. The act of self-destruction necessitated is so huge that writing, composing, any knitted together thought processes are simply not possible. Only that one huge cacoethis, for this truly is a mania, can overcome the body and the mind's banked defences to snuff out the human spirit. To get to that state eschews all logical thought, all imaginative thought. Everything is centred in the will and its single outer-minded relationship to the instrument of its destruction. Even Koestler, who'd spent a lifetime extolling suicide, panicked when the exact moment came. So I say the books can only take you so far. To the tourist spot with the swivel telescope, when what you need is beyond, closed off by barbed wire and at the microscopic scale. At the point of suicide, artists stop making art, writers stop writing, although in Wallace's case, commentators posit that his mental illness meant he'd broken down and was unable to write anything further, and that it was this knowledge that his writing was lost to him for good that impelled him into death. Plenty of artists make art through and with their mental illness, but when that illness reaches a certain pitch, they are consigned to bed, medicated, or consign themselves to the noose. There is a balance between the sundering of reality, that is the affliction of mental illness, and still being able to be in reality enough to sit at a desk and write. The absolute disseverance that conducts suicide is a retreat from reality so deep that they are unreachable by you, by themselves, and by their art. Plath's chosen weapon was the domestic hearth. Maybe that was a comment or punctuation point on the struggle of the female artist still expected to keep house. She wasn't even Jewish. Performance poet Stephen Jesse Bernstein stabbed himself fatally in the throat, the locus of his art as a performer. Those hard-living dudes, Hemingway and Hunter S. Thompson, put shotguns to their mouths when age diminished their puissance and they could no longer hunt, fish and shoot. A cornered hunter turns the gun on himself rather than be mauled to death by the bear. These are not metaphors, for God's sakes, any more than they were cries for help. Primo Levi's books were not an ongoing suicide. Nazi hunter Eli Wiesel said Auschwitz had killed his great friends 40 years after it was liberated. The great literary stylist Yukio Mishima committed suicide by ritual seppuku. Imagine that, following an honour code of death and snuffing yourself out by the book. Is that sufficiently in the style? Unfortunately for him, he botched it, and in ordering a cohort to finish him off with the samurai sword beheading, the confrere's hand was shaking so much he too botched it. And now you know why writers need a good book of anatomy for research. My kin only lived beyond their attempt through their medical ignorance. They cut in the wrong place. Playwright Ernst Toller hung himself from the silk cord of his nightgown, possibly his last luxury item left in his possession, as he was by then utterly impoverished. He executed the act in the Mayflower Hotel in New York City, a place my kin and I had stayed in notionally happier times. I wonder if we'd stayed in Toller's room. But how could it permeate my kin who had never come across the German expressionist work, even if I had? No artist can write their own death, not even a suicide who perhaps possesses more sure knowledge as to when that death will arrive. So stop reading their books trying to find out why.